Fighting Sail, a review. We've played a few games of this here on the channel, and unlike some other places, unlike some other YouTube hosts that will read a game and just, I've figured it out. Here in the House of Wargaming, we like to play the game a few times so we can tell you what it's like to play the game. A lot of times, things that you just figured out just ain't so. End of the day, this is a fine rule set. If you're up for a delightful little simulation of what it means to be a fleet commander during a fleet action 1775 to 1815, we're going to push that, by the way. We may shove that date back a little ways, and I can't speak. Now, before we get too deep into this, I'm no authority. I've read the whole Hornblower series and even watched the BBC adaptation. I have read most of the Captain Jack Aubrey series by, is it Dan O'Brien? In mismatched order over a period of like 10 years, and have seen Master and Commander at least 3 times. So I know what I'm talking, I don't know what I'm talking about. What I do know is what this kind of warfare feels like, and Fighting Sail ultimately is a satisfying experience of being the guy, the Admiral, calling the shots and shoving his little boats around the table. As a game, it's delightful. As a means of evoking that feeling, it is wonderful. What it is not is a hyper-detailed simulation of Fighting Sail. When you're playing this game, you are not concerned with what angle the yard arm is at versus what direction the wind is blowing versus how high should my cannons be in order to hit the range where I'm trying to get the guy. Am I supposed to be targeting his hull, or am I trying to target his rigging in order to cripple it to board? No. That's, you're getting way too deep into it. What this game is an Age of Sail game. And in the Age of Sail, the bulk of the engagement comes about by means of trying to cross the other guy's tee. It's all about using the wind and the terrain to set yourself up for that perfect kill shot, ba-blam, or to get yourself into a position where you can come up alongside. You've done enough damage, you've crippled the vessel so that you can send your two-fisted bros to beat the snot out of his two-fisted bros, and whoever wins that brawl wins the fight. That is what this game does, and it does it very well. For those of you who don't want to sit through an hour of a guy solo playing a game that's really meant for more than one person, let's just go through it real quick, shall we? A couple of minor complaints. One, there is no campaign rules. Here in the House of Wargaming, we like to add additional dimensions of complications to our war games by making every battle depend on what came before, not just a discrete battle in and for its own sake. Minor, this is, it's a minor complaint. This is, what are we looking at? 64 pages. It's got everything you need. And, so it's a fine game. One thing that's missing, and you can, you're a smart guy. You can come up with some campaign rules on your own. And fundamentally, that's not really what the Age of Sail was all about, right? It wasn't boat-on-boat action all the time. This was all in service to a larger game, and I still think that this may come in handy as an ancillary to a land-based campaign. We may use this in the Bellum Munda campaign in the next phase, once I get my pirates painted up and we're ready to move on. At any rate, one other little minor complaint. This book is written for people who are new to wargaming. It's written for people who are new to Fighting Sail, and we could do a whole show on this. There are 2 ways to prepare a set of rules for any game, and particularly any set of rules that is complicated, that needs more than, call it, 32 pages. One, you can write the rules to be readable and to introduce people to the game. The second way is to write the rules to be a useful reference set for now that you're actually playing the game. And over the last, 30 to 40 years, the introductory, it's fun to read cover to cover mindset has taken hold of the hobby. And that's fine. That's just a preference. But I'm moving away from that now. As I do more playing and less collecting, I'm less interested in a book that walks you through the process of assembling the game and playing this individual game, because after you've done that once, you'll never read the book that way again. And if you're going to use the book more than once, which I have and will be, it makes a lot more sense for it to be a reference set. Now, somewhere there's got to be a happy medium where a rule set is easy to reference during play and easy for introduction. This ain't it. I found during play, when I'm looking for, wait a minute, what's the specific order that things are happening, there isn't one page rundown of A, B, C, D, E. Every turn, this is what you're going to be doing. And maybe you don't use all these steps, but these are all of the steps, because there's a lot of them. It's a little bit deceptive. So we'll go through, and let me just, for the benefit of you that don't want to watch a full live play, let's just go through it real quick. You're going to assemble your fleet. Great art in the book. Look at those guys. These are GHQ models, 12400. Nice little rigging in there. And they actually do. They walk you through. Look, you need to learn the terminology. If you were talking about a first-rate ship, we're talking about more than 100 cannons. If we're talking about a little frigate, we're talking about 24 to 28 cannons. And by the way, to that end, one of the things I should point out, this is definitely a fleet game. Just to give you an idea of the scale here, might be kind of fun to look at. This, to the best of my understanding, I'm going to show you two boats here. And if you've seen Master and Commander, and I don't know why you wouldn't, you're a normal red-blooded American or Anglo or British male. This right here, you see these two little ships here? This is the Surprise. This is the Acheron. This is the scale of conflict in the film Master and Commander. We'll put those down there. Aren't those cute? And then here's a fourth-rate ship. Kablow, right? So that kind of gives you an idea of the scale of the game we're talking about. You're going to have multiple ships like this. You buy these little surprises in squadrons of 2 to 3. I do have more first, second, third-rate ships coming, so we'll be doing some bigger battles once those arrive and once they get some paint on them. So that's kind of nice. I like that. As a relative noob to this style of gaming, that is kind of nice. And then we get on to the kind of tokens that you're going to need. And you only need 3, and the game is, like I said, it's a complete game. They give you can photocopy, here's your wreckage, here's your cannons that show who shot, anchors, damage, and then your turn stuff. So we'll get to that in a second. The big thing is you're using test rolls, which are roll d6s, roll a number of d6s, and hope you get at least 1 6. If you get the 1 6, then you passed. So then we get into sailing, and here's where the bulk of the game comes in, right? And they've got nice handy, it's very easy to learn how to play. You roll d6s, and depending on your boat's facing, or your ship's facing with respect to the wind, you will get a sailing point on a 4-up, or maybe a 5-up, or if you're trying to sail directly into the wind, on a 6-up. Obviously, it's harder to roll a 6 than a 4. So if you start the turn facing this way, then you're not going to get as many points. And it does cost more points to turn into the wind, as you'd expect. So using this process, it does give you a very good feel for the fact that whoever is downwind of the other guy has the advantage. He's going to get a lot more points. He doesn't have to spend them, but he's going to be able to get his ships into the position he wants far more easily than his opponent. On the other side, looking around the internet, and I don't know why I do that, but sometimes I look at the internet, and guys complain because, well, if my boat is starting into the wind, how is it that it can move forward? Boats can't move forward. Whoa, slow down, brother. Slow down, take a deep breath, okay? We're not doing a hyper-specific, detailed simulation of how this boat is moving. You are going to be handling 5 or 6 of these boats. These are extraordinarily complicated machines of death, okay? And we're not worried about how it is that this boat is facing this way. This is a representation and the simplifying assumption that just because our model is facing that way, there may be a lot of little micro movements going on, and that's why if I'm rolling 6 d6s and I only get 1, I'm only able to move this far because I'm headed into the wind. Maybe I did some tacking, whatever. We're going to make it simple. Remember, we still got 6 more boats to go through with that. So I actually like this movement system. I think it adds just enough concern for, am I turning into the wind or away from the wind? Where do I want to get my ships to set up to make that all-important run on the other guy? For my money, that movement system it hits the sweet spot. Particularly when you've got... One thing I should point out is that It doesn't matter the size of the vessel that you've got on the table. It's the number of vessels you've got. One first-rate ship, 120 guns, may only set you back about the same point cost as 3 of these little frigates. But when your turn swings around, you have to move each of these guys individually, and that's going to take 3 times the effort of moving this one guy. So it gets fiddly the more boats you get down on into the water. I think a sweet spot for complexity is probably going to be in the 3 to 6 range. I've tried to manage 12, and it just gets to be too much. But again, part of that, I think, is the old Ryan Miller, right? If there is and I should point out, I need to go look at the website for Osprey. They do have a couple of cheat sheets, which would come in very handy. But I don't know if they have the full turn order. So looking at the next, and one thing I glossed over, it's a very simple I go, you go system. It's a modified I go, you go. You roll your for initiative. One side does all the moving for its ships, then the other side moves all its ships. Then the first side shoots all, and then the second side shoots all. And then you do your cleanup in the same way. And cleanup is things like damage control, etc. Well, wait a second. Is it damage control? Because damage control is actually done after movement, but before shooting, but not if you see, this is what I'm talking about, where one streamlined single page of the turn sequence would come in handy, because you might think damage control is after, but no, as after gunnery, but no, not the case. So shooting is very easy. You have a dice pool. The bigger the ship, the more dice you have, and then you're gonna roll the hit, and you're gonna hit on I think it's 3 up if you are to 6 inches, 5 up to medium. I don't want to mislead you guys. It's going to be 3 up at short range, 4 up, and then 5 up at long range. And the nice thing is you've got this thing called explosions. If you know what exploding dice is, if you roll the maximum number, you roll again, and you can do another dice worth of damage. If you do manage to cross the T, where you're firing a full broadside at another boat, then those don't stop. Normally, in a situation like this, if I'm hitting with 6s, then every 6 I roll has the potential to do 1 more damage. But if I'm shooting this way, then every 6 that I roll has a potential to do an infinite amount of damage. Every time you roll 6, you keep rolling until you don't get 6s. So if I only have to roll 1 die and I roll a 6, okay, I did 1 point of damage. But I get to roll it again, and I get a 6. Oh, I did 2 points of damage. And I roll it again, I get another 6. Oh, I did 3. And if I get another 6, oh, I did 4. Now, that doesn't seem like much when you're rolling 1 dice, but a big first raider might be firing 9 dice. And if you're firing at close range, you've got that exploding die on a 5 or 6. Now you're going to get to the point where you're not just hitting the first initial 5 on the first. It might be 3 and then 2 and then 1. You could wind up doing a total of 10 damage. It's a simple hit. For every hit that you get on your opponent's ship, he rolls his hull dice. Bigger ships are harder to damage. They'll get to roll more hull dice. And every 4 up negates 1 of those hits. That's about all there is to it. When you take damage, it's a simple, either you're good or you're not good. And when you're not good, you are said to be crippled. And that's what these are for right here. Your gunnery and your boarding are halved. So if you pull up alongside if you're a small boat, and you pull up alongside a big boat that's crippled, they've taken a lot of damage, they haven't dealt with it, you get to call the shots. You have the initiative. They have their boarding dice. And again, boarding is a very simple question of, if you can get up next to a guy and he can't evade you, then you roll your boarding dice. Both guys roll, you compare your successes, whoever has the most successes wins, and basically either repels the boarders, or if the boarders win, then they get to take control of that ship, which basically means they have to tow it off the board. I did spring for the Litco upgrade ship markers. One of the nice things is one of the damage points is called you receive an anchor. And so until that's cleared, for at least 1 turn, because this comes after movement, until that's cleared, you're only getting movement points on a D6 no matter which way the wind is blowing. So it's a way of representing that you've got some damage to the rudder, or maybe it's to the rigging. Whatever it is, you got 1 turn of moving really slow. People can catch up to you, get into a little better position. After that move, you can make a discipline check. Well-disciplined navies will be a lot more likely to get rid of that before the shooting phase. Poorly disciplined navies are obviously going to have a much rougher go of things. The damage is the same for all ships. Once you take 4, you're out, and there are some degradations that happen to your ships as they take 2 and then 3. And then, of course, I have a couple little broadside markers, too. And that's really about it. They did throw in a couple of these. I think these are shipwreck markers. But, I mean, why would you... It's a miniature war game, right? I would much rather use miniatures for that. That's the game in a nutshell. The book then also includes... You have to worry about fire arcs, bows, sterns. You have to be in this area to get that crusty. Some really nice... I mean, who doesn't want a den with a fireplace, wood panel walls, and something like that above the fireplace? If you don't want one of those, you might be watching the wrong channel. Then you've got your obligatory... I should go over fleet morale. That's kind of the whole point of the exercise. 300-point battle, you've got 30 morale points. Every time somebody takes damage, you're going to lose morale. Once your morale clock turns to 0, you're out. It does include rules for weather, which can be storms, rain squalls, etc. Running aground, I wouldn't recommend it. Speaking as captain of a miniature ship, again, they do have rules for shore batteries, which are very deadly to ships that get too close. Bomb vessels, bomb rafts, and then of course team games. And they do have optional rules for the mini game, which is a frigate duel, which is, again, that looks a heck of a lot like the movie Master and Commander to me. Building your fleet, they've got fleet lists, archetypes. Your captains can get special rules, which may make it easier for them to maneuver their ships. Essentially, it's re-rolling any ones. So a 1 is an auto failure. If you have the special ability, you can re-roll the 1s. For example, in gunnery, it's because your captain spends a lot of time practicing firing, putting lots of lead into the air at once. Or, he's got a lot of mathematicians that are able to sight their cannons better. Or maybe it's a technological improvement that you have over your opponent. Could be any one of a number of things. And then admirals also have an ability. So an admiral, you are going to have a flagship with an admiral, and if you spend the points, your admiral can give every ship in his little mini fleet, 1 bonus. It might be a morale bonus. It might be a bonus to repelling boarders. It could be... What else could it be? What is this one? For example, the French have revolutionaries. The French Navy captain, the nobility were arrested and replaced by brash, less experienced revolutionaries. Once per battle, you can add 3 to your initiative. So these are guys who are willing to take risks. And that kind of helps balance things out as well. And it allows for things like the Americans did not have the big first-rate ships. They were very daring, however. So, your admiral archetypes can help counteract the fact that their ships are overgunned, but that, speaking as a nation, they are badly undergunned. Also has fleets for archetypes for Spain, Russia, the Netherlands, all the big heavy hitters from the Napoleonic era. Portugal, they're in there, even your pirates. And then, of course, we've got our simple scenarios, which list, line them up and shoot. That's Encounter on the High Seas. We've got 1 for Protect the Convoy, always a classic for any one of these kind of games. You've got a couple of 3 cargo ships that are just trying to get across. I'm just trying to get home, bro. And then your fleet is trying to capture them or protect them. We've got Attack the Port, where your special rules, you basically got to get in there, lob a bunch of shells, and get out. And then we've got Running a Blockade, which is just what it sounds like. You've got a certain number of ships that you're trying to get over and across the board. You may sacrifice a few ships to kind of, play offensive linemen to open the path to get through. And then the Fog Lifts, which is a case where you essentially have blockade runners who... That's where terrain comes in. And the game does include rules for terrain, which is kind of nice for things like shoals, but also for fog. And you'll put fog banks down on the table in this scenario. And then everybody starts putting their ships down one at a time wherever. And then at the start of the game, the larger fog bank is lifted. But these guys are still in the way. So all of that gunnery now, you're going to have to be moving around it. So it allows for some line of sight and some actual terrain effects, which is nice to see in a game about fleet actions. Mine are hand-painted. I've got a shoal and then fog on the other side. And then rain squalls operate basically the same way, except rain squalls can drift around whether you like it or not, you might wind up getting rained on, whereas the fog just burns off. There's a chance at the start of every turn that those burn off, and they're gone for the rest of the game. Then the last one is going to be Pursuit and Evasion. You've got one big ship that's being hounded by a bunch of little ships. It shows you which way the wind is blowing. And I think that's about it. I think we covered... Here's your turn sequence, but again, the only turn sequence they give you is initiative, then sailing, then cannons, and we're done. Well, hold on. There's a lot of little sub-phases in there. It gets a little confusing keeping track of those. If I were to play this game, if I were to take this to a scenario, if I were to take it to convention, this is not nearly enough counters. I would highly recommend printing up the damage and the anchor tokens. Each player should really have one of these wind compass and weather gauges and the turning template, because if you're dealing with more than 2 players, if it's 2 players, you're just handing it back and forth. I'm done, and that's your signal that you're done. But if you've got 2 teams of 4, one thing to point out, 2 teams of 4 shouldn't take any more time than just a one-on-one duel, because all 4 of those guys should be moving his boat at the same time. I guess it'll take a little bit longer, just because of things like boarding actions and whatnot, but not appreciably so. I would think it comes down more to how many individual vessels each player is handling again. But I would highly recommend at least having one of these for every other player. And you can photocopy these. You can actually go to Osprey's website, poke around a little bit. They've got those you can print off on your own home printing device. That's all I got for you on this one. Fighting Sail. It's a fun little game. It's a good kind of... I think it's a little more than beer and pretzels. It's not a detailed simulation, but it's a great game. And it's a game that I feel evokes the flavor of what it means to be an admiral bossing ships around, and not just that one-on-one duel. So if you are into Age of Sail, not likely, but if you want to get into it, I think this is a great way to break in. And one last thing I'll point out, all of the ships that I've been showing you here are from Tumbling Dice. They are 1/2400 ships. I use the same range as these rules call for 1/1200. If you're going to use 1/2400, I just think it looks better to have that greater distance. I have no idea. I haven't sat down and run the math on what the effective bombardment range is for the cannons of the day, and whether it means that these ships are now in line, or maybe they're too small based on the ranges, but it looks sharp. It works well. If you want to use this rule set with larger scale ships, 1/600 or even 1/300, you may want to double all ranges. That means you're going to need a much bigger table. The game fits onto a 4x4 table, or what does he say? I think he says 4x4. I do on more about 2.5x3, just because of the necessity of my game space. But that's the one thing I would also add, is if you are looking to play this game, you're going to want, depending on the scale of ship you've got, the 1/2400, 1/1200, you can get away with 3x3. If you're going up to 1/300, it's going to look really wonky to have ships that are this big that score a sailing point and they move that far. You're going to want to go with a much bigger play space. So that's something else to consider. As far as how many ships you need to buy in order to play this game, and this is one of the things that drives me batty when I'm looking for information on a rule set, I need to know what to order, because I don't want to order these rules and I get them 6 weeks from now. And now I look and figure out how much the ships are worth and how big are the games, and now I got to order, and it's going to be, I'm ordering from overseas, so it's going to be another 6 weeks before I get the ships, and then it's going to be another 3 to 4 weeks before I paint them. And I try it, and then I go, oh shoot, you know what? I didn't realize I need to order more ships. Well, which is exactly what I did, but I'm not happy. So just going to give you an example. This is a Russian fleet. The first-rate ship is going to cost you 100 points for a first-rate ship. And then down 60-40, these are for the flagships, for the first, third, fourth. Notice they don't have any second rates. The Russians don't get those. That's fine. Right? Some nations do have second rate. I think the British do. So it's 100 points for the big mamma jammas, down to about 40 for the fourth rate, and then your frigates and, your schooners, is it sloops, I think it is? These are going to appear in squadrons of 2 to 3 vessels, and they cost 32 or 16 points. So just if we want to throw together a real quick 300-point armada, here's what we're looking at. You get yourself a first-rate flagship, that's going to set you back 100 points. We're already a third of the way done. You're going to get a fourth-rate. Let's get 2/3 at 110, so now we're at 210. We've got 90 left. Well, let's go ahead and take 3 fifth-rates. That's going to bring us up to 96. That'll be actually 316, and you're done. Maybe what we do is we say, you know what, let's just go ahead and go with the third-rate flagship. That's 60 points. We're going to go with 2 fourth-raters. Now we're up to 140 points, and then we're going to order 3 of the fifth-rates. We got 6 ships, 200 points altogether. Then we got to buy our archetypes and our secret abilities, which are relatively cheap. Those are only going to be about 10% of your force. So even with those 6 ships, we're up to, what did I say, 200? Call it 10%. We're up to about 225. We still have enough left over for a couple of more fifth-rates. So an 8-vessel, with 3 ships of the line and 5 escort class ships, that's what you're looking at if you want to build your own fleets. Fighting Sail, great game, hits the sweet spot in a lot of different ways. Maybe a little too fiddly for a guy that's running a camera and who is, trying to run 12 ships at once. The game should take about an hour at a 300-point battle, maybe an hour and a half. Now you know what to expect. Now you know whether you'd like this game. If you're the kind of guy that likes this kind of game, you're going to like it. Till next time, I'm praying for you.